Go ahead and test the audio. Make sure everything sounds good. Can you hear me out there? Let's see here. Can you hear any sound right now? Let me know, please. Okay, give me 1 minute. Testing out microphone function really quick. All right, if you can hear me, go ahead and sound off in the chat so I can see. Right now, it looks like my mic audio is not picking up, but if you can hear me, let me know. Okay, Tim, thanks. I appreciate it. All right, so we got a few more people jumping in right now. Let's see. How's it going, DJ Raiders? How you doing? Let's see here. All right. Okay, guys, so welcome to the live stream tonight. There's obviously been a lot of interesting scenarios occurring recently. There's a lot of new information coming out on a daily basis. So I wanted to kind of address some of that information while at the same time giving everybody a forum to discuss this current scenario in. Just want to make sure everybody has a chance to chime in and jump into the live stream before we fully get started. Let's see, Jeff Jones, you're new. Welcome. Thanks for coming by. It's definitely going to be an interesting conversation, I'm sure, as everyone most likely that joins the chat and joins the live stream is going to be affected by what's happening right now. So let's see here. Frugal, how's it going tonight? Good to see you. All right. Jasmine Leno, it is getting closer, exactly. And, I appreciate you coming by and chiming in. I know you've had some high-strung nerves lately with everything else going on, so hopefully you've gotten some reprieve from that recently. Okay. And if you guys are having any issues hearing me, or if you're having any audio or video quality issues, let me know. I'm using YouTube straight live chat platform this time, whereas before I've used other services in the past. And I'm just kind of testing this out to see if it works out okay. How's it going, Lois Young? Good to see you. But if you guys have any issues with audio or anything else, please give me a heads up so I can try to fix it right away, or else, I'm concerned that it's not going to work the way I would like it to anyway. Okay, so one of the first things I want to talk about tonight is the idea that, martial law is being talked about a lot right now. And martial law can be declared, but at a certain point, you could be living under it already without it even being declared. We've seen a lot of different actions in the past where people have basically been put under martial law, regardless of whether or not it's been officially declared. And one of the best examples of that, obviously, is during the Boston Marathon bomber situation, where Boston was put on lockdown. It was basically on a martial law, trajectory, and never was it actually declared, although all the citizenry was basically signed up for it over the course of a short period of time, and the police took full control over the entire city, and all of the constituents went ahead and went along with it, regardless of constitutionality or anything like that, of course, in the name of safety. And the real issue is that the martial law that was enacted at that point in time, with the giant sweep of police throughout the town, didn't actually even capture the gentleman they were looking for. I don't know why I called him a gentleman. Sorry about that. But anyway, they didn't even capture the guy. They basically took a tip from a guy living in his house that said, "Hey, I'm seeing something weird happening over here," and then they found him. So sometimes these tactics aren't even effective, and it makes you wonder why there's such a push to enable the police to kind of act without rule of law. I mean, without any kind of real authority guiding them or telling them what they can or can't do. Things can get very dangerous, and people can be felt like they're being put in the corner quickly. So, the topic of tonight is, will I survive martial law? And literally everything is shutting down. And it's just, what we're seeing happening right now is unprecedented, right? We have never seen anything like this happen before. Those who have been around longer than myself also concur that they've never seen anything really like this in their lifetime. The closest example of what we have right now is post September 11th. That was a time where a lot of people felt like things changed completely 180 from one day to the next. And they did. I mean, a lot of things happened in that short period of time where we gave up a lot of our constitutional rights and a lot of our sovereignty to make sure that the citizenry was safe and to try to put security measures into place that we didn't have before. That was a singular event that happened over the course of a day that we then reacted to, and next thing you know, Patriot Act, right? So right now, what we're having happen is a really, really drawn out scenario where this thing keeps slowly escalating, and the escalation is going hand in hand with everything else that's involved. The escalation is going hand in hand with the overreach of the government. The escalation is going hand in hand with the spread, and the escalation is also hand in hand with the crashing of the economy. We are at a point right now where we're seeing the market crash on a daily basis. We're seeing oil plummet, and at the same time, industries are being shut down left and right in order to combat the spread. Okay. And the reason that martial law feels like it's an inevitability at this point is because we're already seeing those cards fall into place in California. And if anyone knows anything about California, whether or not you like the place or not, whether or not you agree with any of their politics, as a lot of you probably don't, California generally leads the charge in any kind of new initiatives that are going on. And watching California right now is a good indicator of where things are going to go in your state, most likely. I would have not guessed that today in North Dakota, the governor shut down restaurants and bars. I wouldn't have guessed that was going to happen if you asked me 2 weeks ago. But California has been on top of that since the beginning. So I should have learned my lesson. I should have been watching California for what they're doing over there and trying to, I guess, understand what their process was to try to, basically implement martial law. And right now, as you all know, California just announced that they're doing a shelter in place order. It's not even a request. It's not even a suggestion. It is actually now a statewide order that everyone shelter in place and stay at home. And that is a huge issue right now because they're one step away from actual martial law. Eventually, what happens? Hey, Will Patriot, what's going on, brother? Good to see you. Eventually, what happens is these people are going to stop listening to what they're being told. Eventually, what's up, Kanzi? And by the way, Jeff Raspberry, really good to see you here. I'm really glad to have you in the live stream tonight. So, what we're seeing happen in California is the one step away scenario from martial law. And the only thing that's going to require to have happen before it actually gets implemented is somebody deciding they're not going to listen to the direct orders. Okay. I have contacts back in the Sacramento area, back in the Bay Area. I have a lot of friends and family back in that region still as of right now. And I can tell you that a lot of these people are not excited about the idea of being told they can't leave their homes. It is also being told to me that that entire situation is being enforced. It's not just some order that's coming out and being spoke of over the news or over Facebook and people saying, hey, this is what we should do in order to try our best to help things move along and not have anything else bad happen. So we're going to see what that looks like and, kind of play it out and see what happens. That's not what's going on. It's actually an enforced order that you can be arrested if you're out past curfew and you're out where you're not supposed to be. It was understanding that it was supposed to be almost like a fine or something like that originally, but now they're making sure people go back to their home. And the only way to do that is to enforce that they actually get there. So we're hearing a lot of interesting developments coming from that part of the country. A lot of their issues come from the idea of vagrants, right? People, transients, people who don't have somewhere to actually go and shelter in place. So their government's now putting together like a tiny town or something like that, correct? And one of the issues is that there's not enough enforcement to actually get all those people into where they need to be. So what's going to happen, and here's what everyone needs to watch out for. And if you want to survive martial law, imagine this happening where you live, but obviously much slower than what we're seeing over in California. What you're going to see is enough people are going to be breaking all of the restrictions. Enough people are going to say, no, I'm not staying home, or no, I'm not going to go home by midnight, or they're not going to deal with curfews. They're not going to deal with restrictions. They're going to try to get through checkpoints. They're going to try to take back roads or whatever they want to do to try to get where they go. Because let's be honest, a lot of people are entitled to their way of life. And, I promote that, of course. We should all be free and able to live the way we need to. However, in this situation, those people are going to escalate the orders that are on hand right now. So right now, they're trusting the constituency of California to obey the commands. They're telling people, okay, you have to stay where you are, and if you don't, you're going to have a problem. But if enough people don't listen, then they're going to say, we're having too many issues getting these people where they need to be and keeping them where they need to be. So we need to enact the National Guard, have them come in to help us, because we're just too stretched out. We're too thin in our law enforcement to actually enforce these people staying put. So we need to go ahead and activate the National Guard, bring those people in, and make sure that these people are going back where they came from, right? So that is the slow demise into martial law that we're witnessing right now. And they're even saying it out loud, which, if anyone here knows anything about politics or, the more liberal side of the country, they're not afraid to say what they're going to do. I mean, we often see that when it comes to gun control and everything else, right? So if they're saying that martial law is on the table, and if they decide they need to use it, they will, it's because they're going to use it. It's not because they want us to, shaking our boots. They're not trying to scare the populace into listening to them, because generally the populace doesn't even really understand what that means. The populace isn't even really worried about it happening. A lot of people would just say, okay, if I have to stay home, and if you're going to tell me where I can go and when I can leave and what I can do, then I guess I'll just accept it. And they are basically getting ready to just do it. There's not enough law enforcement in California to get those people to do what they want. And I know a lot of the people who aren't going to listen to a lot of the orders that are being said right now, and whether or not that's the right thing to do or not, they're going to be the reason why martial law finally gets enacted. So how do you survive martial law? And with everything shutting down, what can you expect to shut down next? This is the thing we need to talk about. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do a live stream, because I want to see what you guys say in the chat. I want you guys to kind of put some ideas out there. I want you guys to tell me your thoughts on what you think is going to happen soon. But honestly, surviving martial law, a lot of it, has to do with location. If you're in a rural area, you're less likely to interact with those who are enforcing martial law. That's just because they can't afford the resources to patrol miles and miles of dirt road until they finally get to your homestead or your home or whatever you have out in the middle of nowhere. And if you're one of those lucky few that live in a situation like that, then you're in the right scenario right now compared to a lot of the other country. But I do want to say that if you're going to survive martial law and you are in an urban environment, or if you are in a suburban environment, you do need to take some precautions. The best thing you can possibly do, and this sounds like crap because nobody wants to actually do it, but the best thing you can do is stay home. The best thing you can do is bug in. This is a bug in scenario if we have a martial law situation. And the reason why it's a bug in scenario is because once you get out on the streets, and once there's people who are out basically patrolling and telling you what you can or can't do, you're opening the door to a conflict, regardless of whether or not you're the perfect law-abiding citizen, regardless of whether or not you're the guy who supports law enforcement, supports the military, you're true, absolute, patriotic, pure-blooded American. Being in an area where you could be confronted by people who are authorized to enforce the law to the maximum capability that they can, you are opening the door to interact with those people in a negative way. And it's not because you are necessarily out there to cause trouble, and it's not because you're somebody who's looking to have an issue. It's because you're just out. You're putting yourself in harm's way, and that's why you need to stay home. And it sounds counterintuitive to those of us who have years and years and years planned to bug out, right? A lot of bug out guys are in this group right now, I bet. And a lot of us have thought about bugging out and when we would bug out and what the scenario to bug out is. But if martial law is declared, and if you are in an area that is being heavily policed in a martial law environment, then bugging out is not an option anymore. And I think who said that? Kanzi. Yeah, Kanzi chimed in earlier and said, bugging out, too late now, right? So yeah, if you're in California and now your plan is to bug out, if you can make it, maybe it's a way to go. But honestly, my personal opinion is that stay home. And it's going to be difficult because some of us have to go to work still, and so you're going to have special clearances to get to work, and you're going to have reasons for why they need you to actually leave your home instead of working from home and everything else that they're going to require. All those interactions are dangerous. And it's just because everyone's in a heightened sense of awareness, everyone's in a heightened sense of authority, and everybody involved with a martial law scenario wants to be safe and go home and, stay with their families and, survive the next day. So when we're talking about, troops and National Guardsmen who are there to, protect us and serve us and make sure that the population is taken care of, their main goal is to get home. And if they think somebody is causing an issue, they're not going to treat that person the same way you expect a police officer to treat you now. And you can't expect to get out of that scenario without some scratches and who knows what else, okay? So the other thing that we have to really anticipate is the closures. Right now, we're seeing a closing of the hospitality industry in general. The hospitality industry, whether or not you're in it or you've been in it before or you are, just aware of how it operates, those people make up a huge portion of the working population of our country. It is entry-level positions. It is secondary jobs that people work while they're in school. It is positions for people who maybe struggle with childcare, lots of single mothers, lots of people who just need to work part-time but still make enough money to pay bills and take care of themselves. That's who's being affected by the situation. And enough of the population is being put out of work and having their jobs taken away that we're in a situation now where desperation is going to start becoming a reality. We're going to see a lot of very desperate people out there. And a lot of people that I have interacted with recently, a lot of people that I know personally, still aren't fully prepared, still don't have food stocked away. They still don't have supplies. They still don't have security figured out. And those people are going to be the most, what's the right word for this? Stressed and anxious during these times. Those people are basically wondering what's going to happen next instead of having a plan, instead of having a fallback plan. They don't have a contingency ready to go for if this happens, I'll do this. They don't even know what gray man is. Frugal. That's where we're at right now. And if you want to be gray man, do it. And being gray man can mean things like going and standing in ration lines and standing in water lines and getting that handout, right? Make sure everyone else feels like you're in the same boat as them. That's very gray man. But at the same time, you're putting yourself out there. And if you don't have to put yourself out there, you don't necessarily even have to be gray man because nobody sees you anyway, right? So keep that in mind, because a lot of disenfranchised employees and workers right now around the country from multiple industries are not sure what they're going to do next, okay? And the government's not going to respond quickly enough to take care of some of these people. Many people are paycheck to paycheck. I mean, most of us are paycheck to paycheck. This is how things work in this current economy. The average person doesn't have a huge savings account. The average person doesn't invest in the stock market. The average person doesn't have a retirement plan or any other assets besides that paycheck and that bank account they stick it in, right? So those people are going to find that they suddenly have to figure out creative new methods for getting their needs, right? And that's where we have to be careful, because a certain portion, a very small portion, but a certain portion, right, of the population is willing to do things that maybe we wouldn't be willing to do, right? Many of us in this community are very generous. We're very thoughtful people. We want to take care of each other. We're compassionate. But a large part of the average general population is willing to do whatever they have to do in order to survive, okay? And when, for us, that means preparing, stashing away items and, taking care of, our homesteads or our supplies. But for some people, that means taking from people who aren't as strong as them, taking from weaker people. A very important situation right now for everyone in the chat. If you're not ready for martial law, if you don't have your security put away, if you're not ready to defend your home from those who might feel like you have something they need, then make sure you get ready now. That's where we're at right now, everybody. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I don't want to seem like I'm that kind of a guy that is out here trying to just, hoot and holler from the top of the rooftops. I just want to discuss these situations and these possibilities with everybody. I see a lot of preppers in the community and a lot of people, they're constantly downplaying and constantly saying negative things about those who are sounding the alarm or those who are, participating in things like fear porn and stuff like that, right? It's not about that. What it's about right now is discussing the real aspect of what could possibly happen next and trying our best to figure out a way to prepare for it and hopefully, survive together throughout this entire event. A lot of folks are trying to downplay the idea of, raising the alarm. We need to stop panicking. We need to stop inciting panic. We need to stop telling people to prepare or to be worried about what might happen. And exactly, Tim M. It's spreading knowledge. It's not scaring. And sometimes spreading knowledge can be scary. I'm having these discussions with everybody here right now because I'm concerned too. It's not like I'm just completely, impermeable to the events that are happening right now. It's not like I'm perfectly secure in my, finances to just not have work available to me one day. I don't know what's going to happen. And everyone has always said since the beginning of time, right? And I guess I say that probably not quite since the beginning of time, but since the beginning of smart people, that you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best. So preparing for the worst is what we should be doing. And if we're not discussing those possibilities, then how are we going to prepare for them? So that's just kind of my spiel on why I want to talk about these things, everybody. I'm not trying to, act like a crazy person or raise the alarm to, cause all of you to go out and spend your life savings. My goal here is just to discuss what I'm seeing happening, what I think is a very real possibility, and what I think the indicators and signs are for where we're headed. And if you guys, have your own ideas, or if you feel like everything's an overreaction, or if you feel like there's something else going on in the background, which I'm sure a lot of you feel that way because I know a lot of you are involved in other channels that like to go down the rabbit hole once in a while, feel free to let me know in the chat. I really want you guys to, chime in, let me know what your thoughts are. And honestly, I just want people to keep an eye out for the unexpected, because right now things are being broadcasted. Things are being telegraphed. We're being told, yes, let's do this. Yes, let's do that, right? And at the same time, anytime things are being telegraphed or almost too transparent, you have to wonder what's actually going on behind the scenes. And that's not a conspiratorial thing to say. That's literally just us expecting those who have lied before to lie again. And that's where we're at right now. And if you feel like, our leaders haven't lied to us recently, then let's be honest. I assume China didn't lie to us either, right? I assume that all the information we received from them up to date is completely accurate and is full of truth, right? We know that this is a serious situation, and the government in any serious situation is not going to cause panic. They're not going to incite panic, because panic people are impossible to control. And the whole idea right now is to try to get as much control as they can before it starts to boil over the pot, basically, right? And I do want to just mention, I just made some of you guys moderators, mods on this channel. You guys have been around for a long time. I trust you to use your judgment and be solid people here. But my last live stream, there was a couple of trolls that I wish I could have handled a little bit better. But now I got some muscle in here, so I feel a little bit better. Okay. So one thing I also want to mention is that when we see industry shutting down, and I'm talking large swaths of industry and large bank accounts being emptied right now in order to hopefully continue business as usual once this whole thing blows over. Well, if we're seeing industries being shut down right now, what's the next industries for us to see, right? What do you think is going to be taken care of next? Well, we have a couple of things to look out for. One of those things is our gun stores, okay? And I only say that because I've talked to some LGS owners. I've talked to some gun store owners, for those of you who don't know what the LGS terminology is. And I've basically found that they're actually worried about it. They're finding that their background check systems are not working properly. Sometimes they're not working at all. And it seems like it's almost a fabricated crash on the site from the NICS, where basically they're blaming it on traffic. Oh, there's so many background checks going through right now that everything is falling apart and we can't actually keep up. But how convenient is that to bottleneck the flow of new gun owners out into the public during this time where people want to get their security together and they want to be safe? All of a sudden, all the background checks are failing and they're not able to keep up right with demand. At the same time, we also know that if the government can use an excuse like what we have going on right now to go ahead and limit or restrict our, Second Amendment rights, then there's no reason for us to not assume they'll try to. So our local gun stores, we need to watch out for. And don't forget, a national emergency offers some executive powers that if they lead into a martial law scenario, they are more than in their right to confiscate and assume ownership of any kind of ammunition stock and firearm stock that they see fit. And we all know what that means. They're going to find the local gun store and they're going to take it because they're going to need the ammunition, they're going to need the firearms, and they're going to need to make sure that all that ammunition and firearms are not being put in the hands of the citizenry during this time, because they know there's going to be some resistance to people being corralled. Okay. So that's the first thing that we have to be worried about. Before we move on, I really got to get a little more hydrated here. Oh, that's so good. Okay. All right. And the other thing we have to do is watch out for, let's see, somebody called it CANSI, transportation. That's right. Transportation is going to start feeling the squeeze. Now, if the interstates get shut down, which we definitely have some anticipation of that happening, and if people actually start to be restricted on interstate travel in general and no more domestic travel, we have to assume that the transportation and trucking industry is going to be affected very negatively. Right now, the idea in place is that those people are going to go ahead and they're going to let those trucks and let the logistics crews through in order to keep resupplying the grocery stores, resupplying the hardware stores, and all the other places that have been hit really hard lately, and try to keep the supply flowing. Because let's be honest, if people still can get supplies, the panic is less and less. If the supplies run lower and lower, the panic increases. So their goal is to keep those transportation lanes open as long as possible. However, let's be reasonable here. This is just using pure logic. This has nothing to do with some of the people in the trucking industry I've spoken to recently. This has nothing to do with people who are in the know, kind of letting me know that there are some things coming up soon that may restrict our ability to travel. This is literally straight logic that anyone here could use and think through. But if everything's being shut down for the full concern and the full purpose of stopping the spread, then why would they continue to allow items and goods from one part of the country to go to the next? Why are they going to continually take items from one place to the next, while at the same time saying we're going to shut down these other industries because we don't want anybody to catch the spread, right? And that's basic logic. We don't even have to really think that hard to realize that the transportation industry is going to take a huge hit very soon. Logistics are important. We need supplies. We need our grocery stores to keep getting fed right now. A 3-day supply is all you can expect at a grocery store anytime people are on a supply run. And at the same time, our on-time, right on time delivery system is very fragile. And it doesn't even have to be a full shutdown of the transportation industry. Even if they start to limit it and say, 50% of the trucks are going to get through. Well, guess what? There you go. All the supplies are gone, because if half is getting there, it's zero. Okay. And it goes with the same exact thought process and philosophy of 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So if they cut transportation by any large percentage, then we got to assume that the supplies are going to run extremely low, if not out. And the transportation industry is going to get hit because it's only logical. The only way things like the crisis we're dealing with right now spread around an entire country is the transportation industry. It's not because of air particles that tend to travel huge distances and finally deliver the method to the next person. That's not how this works. So basically, please watch out for your local gun stores and to your transportation industry. We all know truckers here. There's probably truckers in the chat right now. If you know a trucker, talk to them. If you haven't talked to anybody that that's a trucker or in the transportation business, make sure you speak to them. See what their thoughts are. See what they're being told. Find out what their routes are looking like. Are they being changed? Are they being altered or modified? Are they being required to stay within their state lines rather than go across? Those are all things you should start asking people if you have any of those contacts, because those people are going to be able to tell you better information than probably anybody else. So real quick, let me go ahead and touch up the chat real fast. I want to see what you guys are talking about. I want to kind of touch base here. Let's see, Kanzi saying the energy industry is another important area. I agree 100%. I also could see the energy industry being taken over by the federal government if things get too bad, when they want to make sure everybody has access to utilities and they want to defer bill payments, or if they want to make sure people don't get power or water shut off to their homes, they might assume control. And that's also within their rights during a martial law scenario, which, obviously government run power and gas and everything else, in theory could sound like a good thing for a lot of people, but we all know anything the government touches basically gets ruined over time. So let's hope that doesn't happen, because the other side of this whole scenario is, how many things do you think the government is going to seize or take control over and relinquish once everything calms down? Do you really think that that's a reasonable possibility to expect? Are we really understanding that the government is going to go ahead and give back every little thing that they took or used during this time? I very highly doubt it. Okay, so this is something we also have to consider. So I think a lot of people that are recently chiming into the chat, make sure if you want to hashtag new, just so we can see who's new to the chat, to see what kind of information you've gotten and to see what other stuff that you need to be informed about. That helps me out a little bit, just to know how many newcomers we have. It lets me kind of go back in and, say hello to everybody. But basically, what we're talking about here is we want to make sure everybody has the idea in place that they're probably going to see martial law enacted very soon, and everybody needs to be able to survive it. And surviving martial law is its own share of challenges. It's not something that any of us can necessarily train for. Maybe if you are a veteran, or maybe you're ex-law enforcement, or maybe you're current military or law enforcement, maybe you have some more insight on what you think the citizenry should be expected to do, how we should be expected to act, what you're being expected to consider when it comes to having to enforce laws and restrictions on people that aren't used to being restricted, and what you're being told you might encounter during that time. That would be great for us all to hear, and everybody here to understand. So like I said, the chat is where it's at. We want to keep everybody up to date. We want to keep everybody in the know. And if you guys are more knowledgeable than somebody else, including myself, please feel free to share the information, because we would very, very much appreciate having more and more knowledge before any of these next events occur. So right now, one thing I can say is what we talked about earlier in the chat, one thing that everybody can chime in at, but bugging in, staying home, sheltering in place. Those are the best options for you if you're in an urban environment under a martial law situation. At that point, it is too late to leave. If you're trying to leave, you might get stuck with your vehicle, and that's it. You might not have access to your home any longer. You might not have access to your supplies, and you might be stuck in an area or in a position where you didn't want to be. So if you're going to travel during a scenario like that, make sure you're aware that you might not be able to go back, because once things are locked down, the restricted areas are not going to be allowed to be returned to on a timely basis. So if you're going to leave, make sure it is with intent. Make sure that you are going to go where you're supposed to go and be there for as long as you can, okay? So let's see here. We have the Marked Wolf. How can I bug in if food supplies are getting lower and power might be down? So the Marked Wolf, bugging in, I guess for the purpose of this conversation is, I was referring to the fact of how you can survive a martial law scenario and how you don't want to be out and about and put yourself at risk by just interacting with other people or interacting with those who are suddenly in charge. But if you are low on supplies and your power might be down, yes, you may have to go out and you may have to be one of those folks that has to stand in line for rations, and you may have to be somebody who has to get creative with your secondary power sources. Okay, Lisa Bicknell, start a garden if you can. Start a way for you to maintain food and calories without relying on the supply chain and without relying on handouts. That is unfortunately the best answer for that situation. Sometimes bugging in, even if it's tough, even if you have to really extremely ration the supplies you do have, is still the best answer, because outside might be more dangerous than not being fed as frequently as we would like to be. You really have to weigh out the scenario at that point and keep a really keen eye on the news, on the internet, on the alternative media, and try to keep an eye on your area and see how people are acting, see how people are reacting. If anybody here has ever seen a natural disaster and seen looters and the way people act when supplies get limited and when help is not on the way, we can expect to see that even when there is supplies, even when there is help available right now. We're already starting to see it in many ways. People are being attacked and having their groceries stolen. I recently was informed that a butcher shop was robbed and all the meat inside was taken. I mean, people are taking to the streets already. They might be doing it a little bit more low key than what you see in like a riot scenario, but people are actually going to businesses and taking what they feel they deserve. And that's where we are, where we're at right now. And those are the actions and those are the people that are going to cause martial law to be enacted. This is what starts it. It's not about the containment. It's not about anything like that. It's about keeping people under control and not letting safety become an issue. And we're going to see it happen because people are inevitably going to do these things. Okay, this is where we're at. And for everybody who is worried or anxious about where things are headed, just make sure you're aware. A lot of people are in the same boat as you, and a lot of people are worried about what the future holds and what's next. But the other thing you have to consider is that those people aren't here on a live stream on YouTube trying to find out more information. Those people aren't trying to get their minds prepared for how they're going to make the right decisions when these things occur. And those people might not have any supplies stashed away or any security figured out or anything else considered that we can all, consider a part of preparing. These are the things that give you an edge and give you a little bit more of a reason to have some confidence. And that's what we all have to keep in mind. Everybody here is willing to accept the idea that this could really happen. And the people who aren't, those are the people that are going to become the dangerous ones, because they still won't accept things once they're reality. And when that happens, they will then turn around and say, I'm not going to accept not having food. I'm not going to accept not having water. I'm not going to accept it. And those people are going to be the ones that want to come out and find that food and find that water and take it without regard of anybody else's safety. Okay. So keep that in mind. Everyone in here, everyone in this chat has an edge, and everybody who is willing to open their mind and accept the idea that martial law is a reality that's on the horizon, and that if California does it, you can expect more states to do it and more states to do it after that. And it's just like everything else. I left California almost 2 years ago now. I never looked back, but I will tell you that when it comes to fashion, trends, business, when it comes to a lot of things, they do set the tone and they set the pace for what everybody else can expect. And right now they're doing the same thing when it comes to this response. If they are going to shut down everything, 40 million people being told to shelter in place and to stay in their homes and not do anything and not spend money, which is what everyone else would like to see them do. then we have to consider that that's probably going to be coming to a neighborhood near you soon. Okay. We are all in a situation right now where every 24 hours things are changing. Every day we're not sure what's going to happen next. And I'll be honest with everyone here. There's news left and right. There's a drug for malaria that's helping combat things, right? There is a different style of cure that's on the way, right? We are, analyzing some new techniques for combating this whole thing, and we're finding some good results. Yes, I think there's probably people working on those things right now, but do I think that they're going to be a quick turnaround kind of a situation? No. And do I think that they're going to be able to mass produce whatever it is they're working on all of a sudden? I really doubt it. I think these are feel-good stories that are there to try to help us maintain control and not panic and give people light at the end of the tunnel and hope, because a lot of times that is more powerful than having anything tangible. Just give people hope, give them a light at the end of the tunnel, and tell them, yes, it's on its way. Everyone's going to be fine. Everything's fine. Here's 3 or 4 good stories about how you're going to be fine. It's just still in the works. So once it's ready, we'll do our best. Okay. I see that being an issue. And I feel like propaganda of all sorts is just rampant right now. A lot of people would consider what I'm doing right now propaganda, probably. If I shared this live stream on Facebook, they'll probably take it down, even though I'm trying to avoid any of the hot topic words, right? These are the things that we're seeing a lot of right now: censorship, and even real information, according to those who consider what's real or what's fake, isn't being allowed to be spread because it's coming from some other person. And as a third-party person, you're not educated or informed enough to be in charge of spreading that information. So that's what we're seeing right now as well. And censorship, along with martial law, is expected. I mean, any kind of government restriction when it comes to people being kept in their homes or kept in a certain area, and then also being told what they can or can't share on Facebook or say on the internet. I mean, that's just the basics. Let's be honest. So let me see in the chat here. I want to see what you guys are talking about. I mean, right now we've got police are being hired to protect the bum tickets, right? Well, I could say, yeah, police are being hired to protect all the assets that are considered valuable and rare right now. And whatever that is, that's what people are worried about. And that's what people are going crazy about. And that's what you have to protect. It's not about protecting the commodity itself. It's about protecting the people who are there to get more of it. And that's the issue. I mean, people are willing to fight over it at this point, The Marked Wolf. So you're saying you live in the middle of a quarantine city, okay? So what city are you in, if you don't mind, or would you at least maybe tell us a state that you're in? Because right now, what I'm understanding is that from within those zones, things don't feel like they are expected to feel. I feel like a lot of people are reporting that we're not getting the full story on how daily life in the quarantine zone is going. We're not getting the full story on how activity looks in the streets or what people are doing in order to stay supplied or anything like that. So if you have any insight on that, The Marked Wolf, please feel free to jump in. South Florida DCL, good evening to you as well. Glad to have you here. I know Florida is kind of like the East Coast California, let's be honest. I'm not saying politically, but just in general, there's a lot of connections to those two states based on population, based on quality of life, and everything else. And Florida, a lot of times, will be the next state to possibly enact certain measures that California is enacting right now. The population zones are where these things happen first. And if you guys don't believe me, I mean, just watch how the cards fall, because I really doubt that the next state to do things as far as California does is going to be Wyoming. I don't see that happening, or Nebraska. I really doubt it. So, it's getting to that point, where we're all just waiting to see what happens. And it's not really a comfortable place to be. I don't really want to be in a position where I'm just trying to find out what's going to happen next all the time. I am trying to be speculative. I am trying to get ahead of the ball. I am trying to do my best to project what I think is next on the list when we're getting the information we are. But talking to you all and talking to everybody in our community is really helpful in that as well. I'm getting insight from places that I haven't really gotten insight from before. I'm hearing information from certain sources that are reliable, but also don't usually share information. And when these higher end sources that let's say, are willing to risk things in order to share the information they feel is pertinent right now, I have to feel like there's something to that, because those people are risking their livelihoods to spread more of that information. And that's where I get worried. I feel like people are out there putting their necks on the line to try to get us all more prepared and get ready for what's coming. It's really important that I quickly just thank everybody here in the chat, and thank everybody that's here at the live stream and that frequents my channel, checks out my videos. I really appreciate every single one of you. This experience being on YouTube and being part of the prepper community and meeting people that are in this community has been very awesome. I am not going to lie to you guys. And I also just love interacting with you as well. I try to respond to every single comment, and I try to get back to every question that I have, because I think it's important that we all talk and that we all keep a good line of communication going. So I just wanted to quickly pause for a second and thank all of you for being here, and thank you all for your support. There are some cool things coming to the channel soon. There are some new announcements that'll be made eventually here as well. I have some other firearm related stuff coming out relatively soon as well. But things have been put on pause due to our current situation. And I think there's a lot of priority that needs to be had with what we're all dealing with right now. When has anyone in their lifetime experienced what we're experiencing right now? I don't think anyone has. I don't think you guys have. I don't think I have. I've talked to people who are much older than myself, and they're saying the same thing. They have not either. This is new to them. This is new territory. This is where things have escalated to a point where we're seeing cross sections happening. And I'm not gonna lie, making some videos 8 months ago, 10 months ago about some of these topics being a possibility, not once did it cross my mind necessarily that I expected an intersection of them all to occur simultaneously. I will say that I've said this before, and I'll say it again. My number one worst case scenario SHTF situation is an economic collapse. And I believe economic collapse can lead into every other SHTF that we expect could happen, as well as be caused by other SHTF events. And I think we're witnessing that right now. And maybe it's for the better in the long run. Maybe this is an economic reset that's very much needed. Maybe we're going to eventually get all of our necessities from within the USA and not rely on foreign entities so much like we have in the past. Maybe this whole situation leads us into a better direction. I don't know, but I do know that there's multiple events happening right now that, sure, at any point in time we could have speculated could happen one day or another. A pandemic, for example, I believe is probably the most obvious thing we all have talked about for a long time as being a possibility. It's been on the news. It's been all over social media. It's been everywhere, right? But I never expected to be looking down the edge of this economic crisis and an outbreak and whatever else is not being announced currently, which I believe there's more to it. I believe there is things that we're not hearing about. Just so everyone here is aware, I want you guys to be safe. I want you to be secure. I'll probably try to end this live stream right around the 1 hour mark. So let's go ahead and chat for another 10 minutes or so and just try to make sure if there's any questions you have, if there's anything that you want addressed, or if there's anything you want to ask me, please just hit up the chat. Let me know. I'm going to go ahead and read through some really quickly. And while I'm reading, I'm going to tell you guys, I was told today by somebody who has some I guess you would say inside knowledge, that there's an expectation that this weekend, over the weekend, we should be hearing something most likely from the executive branch about a federal executive order coming down the pipe. And when I say that, what I mean is most likely some kind of a lockdown. And in my personal opinion, what that means is most likely some kind of a domestic travel restriction. and possibly following in lead with California and states like mine, North Dakota, probably getting all restaurants, bars, hospitality places, gyms, churches, schools, everything federally, nationally locked down. So if that happens, we're going to see some really interesting events unfold afterward, and we need to to really be careful and really be mindful over the next few days. Okay, the weekend is the best time for them to announce these things because a giant majority of the working populace is off. A lot of people are off. If kids are in school, they're out of school. If you work at some 9-to-5 job, which I've never had in my entire life, so I'm not sure what that's like, but if you're one of those people, you're probably off. The weekend is when these things get announced because everybody's already home. And if you're going to make everyone stay home, you might as well do it when they're already there. It makes it a lot easier than trying to get everyone to go home, okay? You don't want to declare a federal lockdown. You don't want to declare a enforced shelter-in-place order when everyone has to drive back home first, because let's be honest, that's chaos in the streets. That's people trying to get home and trying to panic and buy whatever's left on the shelves before they go there. And that's not what they want to see happen. So be prepared. Do I know this is going to happen for an absolute fact? No, of course not. I didn't know yesterday that today the governor of North Dakota was going to say, hey, no more bars, no more restaurants. You know, I don't know for an absolute fact anything at this point. But this is information I'm getting from people who are getting letters and they're getting notices, they're getting phone calls, and they're being told that this is happening, and they're in situations and they're in positions where you know, they're being informed of this before we are, because they're going to be needed during those times. Okay, so very important that we keep an eye on this weekend. Very important that we keep an eye on that 3-week mark. You know, it was just 4 or 5 days ago now when I said that martial law was imminent and that we had a 3-week timeline on it. We're still within that timeline, and it's looking more and more like this is going to happen. Let's see. So real quick, I'm going to go through. So narcotics offenses: theft from persons, retail theft, theft from auto, burglary, vandalism, stolen crimes, prostitution, Philly. They won't arrest for those crimes. Okay, so yeah, they are prioritizing law enforcement based on what they feel is important right now. So crime is going to increase because it's not being managed the same way as what we're used to in the past. Keep that in mind. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have going on here? One of the issues I'm having out here, North Dakota is a really big area for the Native American population. And from what I understand is that the reservations are sovereign. So they can decide to close or not if they want to. They're being suggested to close. Of course, they're given all the same guidelines as everybody else when it comes to health code, but they're not required to follow it because they technically don't have to listen to what the government says. So that's my understanding of it. That was actually discussed today by our governor. So if that's the case, of course, I mean, you know, people might flock to those places because it's the last place to go have a good time. And then what do? I mean, you literally are causing like the worst case scenario at one place instead of spreading it out all over the place. So I'm not sure how they'll respond, but Kanzi, that's just my understanding of our area. Maybe where you're at, it's a different story right now, and maybe that will change, but I don't know the exact information on all that. So, so South Florida, DCL, my locale. I'm in western North Dakota, so you know, close to the Montana border, yeah, out in the oil field, out in the Bakken. So this is where I'm in kind of the crossfire of a oil crash along with this other situation we're dealing with. So I have to deal with the idea that our local economy is falling apart while we're also being told to shut down hospitality industry related businesses because of trying to contain the spread. So, I mean, it's a double whammy right now. And I feel like every double whammy eventually becomes a trifecta. So let's see, when is that trifecta going to happen? Hopefully not this weekend, but it sounds like that's where we're going to be. That's just the information that I'm receiving. So, you know, let's see. There's a blackout in Ohio, according to Josh Connors. So Now, is that actually like a blackout in the sense of the power grid, or are we talking about just like a lockdown? Because I haven't received that information yet. I was told that it was a possibility. I definitely read some information about how there was a lot of people thinking that that was going to happen soon. But if the blackout has actually begun, then that's something that I think everyone should be aware of and keep an eye on. I'm just not aware of that quite yet. Like I've said before, and I'll say again, I'm never afraid to tell you guys if I don't know something, and I'm never afraid to admit when I am wrong. So always feel free to correct me. Always let me know if there's something I'm saying or maybe some information I put out there that is either outdated or no longer accurate. Okay, I don't have any issue with anybody letting me know that I'm wrong. Okay, I've been wrong many times in my life. I'm not going to lie to you guys. So yes, California is ordered to lock down. I mean, yeah, the whole state, and that's a lot of people and a lot of economy being locked down. And just so everyone knows, I know this is a sometimes lesser known fact, but California produces a huge portion of the nation's agriculture. And if that agriculture is not allowed to leave the state for one reason or another, the rest of the country is going to suffer from that that loss of production. So Jeff Raspberry, lots of activity at the National Guard Armory. Okay, that's interesting. I think that coincides with a lot of the activity we've been seeing on the streets and on the interstates. There's been cars and caravans, Humvees driving down the streets. There's been personnel vehicle. There's been trains carrying tanks and armored vehicles all over the place lately. They're trying to, in my opinion anyway, get everything transported to where it needs to be now. So when things do get locked down, they're already in position and ready to roll. I don't expect there to be a scramble to go lock things down once they announce it, because it's too late then. So they have to get everything in place and they have to have everything ready so that the second the order comes down, they can throw up the roadblocks, make a perimeter, and start enforcing the new restrictions that are going to be put on us. So that's kind of what you should expect. Let's see here. We just had the police come and close down our maple syrup sugar camp, telling us to pack up and go home. So, yeah, and I just found out from a colleague today that there were some bars down in Missouri that decided not to close, right? The governor said, I want all restaurants and bars closed. And some of these bars were like, well, I just won't serve food, right? They're just like, I'm just going to sell alcohol, and people need a place to drink, and I need to make some money because I can't pay my employees otherwise. So they denied the order. They remained open. And guess what? The police showed up. They came in. They said, shut it down, and that's it. There's no more operating this business until further notice. So even though they disagreed with the order from the governor, it was enforced by law that they had to comply. So just keep that in mind. These things that are coming down the pipe, these shelter-in-place situations, these martial law scenarios that we're looking at are not optional. These are all mandatory items that are something we don't get to decide on. This is something we have to live with. So make sure, like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm going to say it again now, get where you need to be now. If you aren't home, if you aren't with your family, if you aren't where you need to be and have your security with you and have your supplies with you, then you should already be there. You guys got to go. You have to. I've talked to some people recently this month that just told me, well, all my firearms and all my food is all back in, California. And I, it's all there at the house I own, but, it's all there. So, hopefully I can get back to it when I need to. That's a bad mentality to have. And I let that person know that, because you can't say you have these things if you don't physically have them. If they're not in your possession, if you don't have access to them right now, you're probably not going to have access to them. So having that mentality and thinking that, well, I'm prepared, it's just 1,000 miles away, is a bad mentality to have. Please make sure you have those things with you. And if you don't pretend that you're prepared. Just go out and get more stuff. Bring it back with you next time you go. But don't rely on things that are far away or that don't exist in the current situation you're in. A lot of people have told me that, I just moved here last year. I still haven't brought up all my guns, Why? What are you waiting for? This is a bad idea, I don't know. I'm a very adamant gun owner. I'm a very adamant Second Amendment supporter. And the idea of me being anywhere without any firearms on me at all is only reserved for those rare occasions where I maybe fly to Hawaii or something like that and take a vacation. And that's only because of the concept of what I'm doing at that point. But very rarely does that happen. And my last vacation was to Texas, and we drove, and you better believe I did not find myself unarmed at any point in time. So if you're one of those people and you don't have what you need with you right now, then please do your best to get it. Okay. You have to get it. And I don't know if you guys are in the suburbs, the urban areas, if you're in large, crowded, populated areas, now's the time to decide if you want to get somewhere else. If you don't, if you have everything you need and you can just stay indoors and bug in and be good to go for a long period of time, maybe you're fine. Okay. And I think that that's a good position to have yourself in. But if you have nothing and you're worried about having nothing while also being surrounded by large populations of other people who have nothing, then, don't wait. Waiting is exactly what happens. You wait and you wait and you wait, and then it's too late. It's always that way. You can't wait for everything to be perfect. You have to do it now, and then if it never happens, oh well. But if it does, you're going to be glad that you did what you did. Okay? So we're at the hour mark. I want to go ahead and thank every single one of you for being part of the chat. I want to thank every one of you for supporting the channel. I am trying my best to keep things rolling here more frequently than what you guys might have been used to before, and that's why I introduced the live streams. I want you guys to be able to interact more and us to be able to talk a little bit more. So I want to make sure that we basically have a chance to communicate, and that we can get more of a message out and more information out more frequently while we're in these trying times. During this crisis, sharing information, sharing ideas, and talking to each other about what's going on in our regions is extremely important and very critical to everybody, staying safe. Frugal saying, being brave and asking, can anyone here take me in? It's a long story, but I'm good people and I need a place to bug out to. I've been self-isolating, and that's their email. Okay. So, I don't have the capability of doing that currently, Frugal, so I apologize. But anyone who needs help, or anybody who's not happy with where they're at right now and wants to rely on other people, I think, there's a lot of people in this community that are willing to try their best to do that. Okay. And it depends on what part of the country you're in, and it depends on everybody's individual situation. But I will be honest with you. I've got, children, and my wife's pregnant. So right now is not a good time for me to be taking in other people. So I apologize, Frugal. But I do hope you find a group of people or a location that's going to be more beneficial for your situation. Okay. And if you're not sure, Reddit, if you go on the Reddit, r/preppers or r/bugout, there's a huge community there, and maybe there's a better chance for you to find people there that might be able to help you out. So everybody, I just want you to be safe. I want you to be aware, and I want everyone here to survive the upcoming martial law that we can expect, okay? I really do feel like things are just going to continually get worse right now. I don't have a super optimistic outlook because even if things aren't escalating with certain situations that we're all dealing with right now, it seems like the leadership is escalating. It almost feels like each governor is trying to one-up the next guy or be the first one to make the decision before the other guy does, okay? Nobody wants to be state number 50 to make a decision. So just be aware, we're going to see a lot of that happening soon. Thanks to every one of you. Much appreciated. I think this is going to be it for the live stream. And if you guys need anything or have any questions, magicprepper.com. I got a contact form there. Hit me up, and I'll do my best to answer your emails, and I'll do my best to take care of you because right now that's what we all have to do. So without anything else to say about surviving martial law and the fact that everything is literally shutting down, I guess that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.